I'm a human too. I have a family. I have 2 kids who are devastated by these comments, and so all I'll say is just, it's obviously been a tough week.
Reports are circulating that the golden girl of women's basketball has officially drawn a line in the sand, allegedly telling insiders she is done with Team USA.
I'm a human too. I have a family. I have 2 kids who are absolutely devastated by these comments. And so all I'll say is just, it's obviously been a tough week. You see, the entire basketball world was left absolutely stunned when these whispers started to surface that Caitlin Clark had finally, and I mean finally, reached her breaking point after months of taking hit after hit on the court, single-handedly carrying the league's ratings on her back, and smiling through what felt like constant, relentless criticism. She was reportedly benched behind closed doors in a way that just completely crossed the line. What was supposed to be a moment of honor, a chance to represent her country, was twisted into a raw public humiliation. And here's the part that's causing shockwaves. Insiders claimed she walked straight out of that practice, furious, making it crystal clear that she was refusing to stay silent for 1 second longer.
It sounds like the commissioner herself, Kathy Engelbert, might have unintentionally confirmed the toxic environment that led to this shocking decision.
The WNBA is in a full-blown scramble right now. Team USA is in a state of absolute shock, and you better believe the fans are online, on social media, everywhere, demanding answers, and they deserve them, because this moment, this single event, isn't just about one practice or one player. No, this has the potential to fundamentally change the entire future of women's basketball forever. We are talking about a pivotal moment that could redefine the power structure, the culture, and the direction of the sport for years to come.
They thought Caitlin Clark would be grateful just to be in the building, happy to sit at the end of the bench and learn from the legends. But it looks like the WNBA pushed their biggest star too far, and now the consequences are rolling in like a tidal wave.
From the very second the news leaked, it honestly felt like the entire sports world just stopped dead in its tracks. Picture this. Team USA officials, during a closed-door practice session completely hidden from the public eye, had quietly reshuffled their player rotations. And according to the insiders who were there, Caitlin Clark wasn't just moved down the list a spot or 2. She was pushed so far into the background, so deep onto the bench, that she barely even touched the floor. It was a clear and undeniable message being sent in the quiet of that gym.
It started with what many are calling the biggest roster mistake in sports history, a decision that set the tone for everything that followed. When the Team USA squad was announced for Paris, the one name generating all the buzz, the name that was selling out arenas and driving TV ratings through the roof, was nowhere to be found. The selection committee hid behind the excuse of experience, claiming Clark hadn't paid her dues yet.
Now let's be perfectly clear about what this was and what it wasn't. This wasn't some simple strategic adjustment, or a coach just trying out a new lineup. Oh no, it felt deeply intentional, and every single person in that gym, from the players to the staff, could sense the seismic shift in the atmosphere. You could see players whispering to each other behind their hands. Coaches were suddenly finding the floor incredibly interesting, avoiding eye contact at all costs. Even the staff members looked bewildered and confused as the one person responsible for the league's highest ratings in history stood there, silently on the sideline, forced to watch others run the very offense she had completely mastered all season long. For months, fans had been asking the same question. Just how much disrespect could Caitlin Clark possibly take? She was shockingly left off the original Olympic roster, despite being, without question, the single biggest name in the entire sport.
While the world was tuning in to see her logo threes and flashy assists, the powers that be decided to bench her for the entire summer before she even stepped on the court. It was a loud, undeniable message to the rookie. You might be famous, you might be rich, but
She absorbed one cheap shot after another from opponents on the court, endured a relentless barrage of online attacks from critics, and had to deal with a league that frankly never seemed all that eager to protect its biggest star. Yet, through every single bit of it, she remained composed and professional. She put her head down and just focused on her game, refusing to be drawn into the drama. But this benching, this felt entirely different. This wasn't a physical hit on the court. This wasn't just trash talk from a rival. No, this was a cold, calculated message delivered directly to her face in front of her peers.
Commissioner Kathy Engelbert stepped in and poured gasoline on the fire. In a recent interview on CNBC that can only be described as a PR nightmare, she tried to downplay the toxicity directed at Clark by comparing it to the Magic Johnson and Larry Bird rivalry of the 80s. She sat there, smiling, and spoke about marketing, valuation, and how great this rivalry was for the business of the league.
The message was clear: you aren't one of us yet. To the veteran players, it might have just seemed like they were maintaining the established hierarchy, the pecking order they built over years. But to Clark, you have to understand, it was a moment that cut so much deeper than any physical hit she took during the entire regular season. She wasn't just being pushed aside for a few plays, she was being explicitly told that she didn't belong. Think about the irony here for a second. The very same players who were benefiting from the massive jump in attendance, the sold-out arenas, and the record-breaking TV ratings that she brought into the league were suddenly acting as if her presence was completely optional. It was a stunning, complete reversal of what the fans all believed, and more importantly, what the hard numbers and data unequivocally proved, and the timing of it all. It just couldn't have been worse.
It sent a clear signal that the league cares more about the drama and the dollars than the safety and mental well-being of the player bringing in those dollars. The backlash to the commissioner's comments was immediate and furious. The WNBA Players Association, usually a group that stands by the league's growth, had to issue a statement distancing themselves from Engelbert's take. Players like Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier had to step up and say what the commissioner wouldn't: that there is no place for hate in the sport.
With the excitement for the Olympics building to a fever pitch and Team USA preparing to assert its dominance on the international stage, Clark logically expected to contribute in the exact same way she always had, by being a game-changing force. Instead, what she was handed was cold silence, utter confusion, and a deep sense of humiliation. Witnesses from that day say you could literally feel the tension crackling in the air as Clark walked off the court. She didn't yell, she didn't cause a scene, she didn't complain, she just left, but with a look on her face that said absolutely everything that needed to be said. And that chilling moment, it turns out, was only the very beginning of the massive fallout to come. Caitlin Clark's monumental decision to step away from Team USA wasn't some sudden, impulsive act. No, it was the inevitable result of months of relentless pressure, systemic disrespect, and a system that absolutely refused to protect or properly value its single biggest star. Her walking out of that practice exposed a league completely divided between its celebrated past and its undeniable future. The veterans who once defined the entire sport are now coming to the stark realization that they no longer control the momentum. In the end, Clark chose her own peace, her own body, and her own dignity over a program that had fundamentally failed her. And as the entire basketball world scrambles to process the fallout from this earthquake, one truth now stands clearer than ever before: the future has arrived, and it absolutely refuses to be benched. The absolute shock of that practice session didn't just materialize out of thin air. It was the explosive result of months and months of tension building just beneath the surface. A storyline that stretches all the way back to that original controversial Olympic snub. When Caitlin Clark was first left off Team USA, the selection committee tried to sell a story about experience and chemistry, claiming she needed more time, more seasoning, more patience. The fans didn't buy that excuse then, and they definitely don't buy it now. That initial decision created a wound that never truly healed, and this latest benching just ripped it wide open all over again. From the very beginning, Clark's meteoric rise disrupted the comfortable, predictable rhythm that the league's veterans had enjoyed for years. See, she wasn't supposed to be the star this early. She wasn't supposed to completely dominate the ratings, ticket sales, and national media conversations. She certainly wasn't supposed to single-handedly shift the power structure of the entire league before her rookie year was even finished. Yet, she did all of it, and instead of embracing that incredible momentum, Team USA seemed to double down on protecting the old guard. The original snub became a symbol of something much bigger. It wasn't just about missing a roster spot, it represented the league's deep-seated fear of change, a fear of new voices, and a fear that a brilliant young star would outshine the familiar faces that had defined the program for over a decade. Even when Clark proved she could adapt, even when she showed she could thrive alongside top talent, the committee's reasoning never wavered. And now, with her finally invited to join the team, they just reenacted the exact same pattern. Before Clark even got a real chance to integrate, they placed her on the outside looking in. It didn't seem to matter how many millions of fans tuned in specifically to see her, or how many jerseys she sold, or the fact that players her age in other countries were already leading their national teams. Team USA wanted her in the building, but they clearly did not want her in control. This second slight, this public benching, carried a completely different weight. It signaled to Clark that the program's fundamental attitude toward her hadn't changed one bit. She wasn't being seen as an asset to be celebrated. She was being treated as a threat to a system built long before she ever arrived. And that unspoken truth is precisely what pushed all of this tension right to its breaking point, because the very next move she made would send shockwaves far beyond a single practice session. What truly made this situation explode wasn't just the benching itself, it was the entire history that came before it. From the moment Caitlin Clark stepped onto a WNBA court, she became the target of physical play that went far, far beyond normal competition. Fans watched in horror as she was shoved, tripped, blindsided, and hit with full-body checks that would have been immediate flagrant fouls in any other league. The moment that truly defined the season was that infamous hip check that sent her crashing to the floor before the ball had even been inbounded. And instead of outrage from league leadership, Clark got deafening silence. That silence sent a message that spread like wildfire through the league. It told other players that they could be as physical as they wanted with Clark because nothing serious was ever going to happen. The league leaned into that climate and treated her like a threat to be physically contained rather than a rookie learning her way. But what struck fans the hardest wasn't just the rough play, it was the overwhelming sense that the officials and the league executives were not protecting their sport's most valuable asset. Every uncalled foul, every late whistle, every hard shove, it all added up, and Clark, to her credit, took it all in stride. She refused to complain publicly, refused to feed the drama, and just focused on basketball. But even the calmest athlete has their limits, and every silent bruise added to a growing frustration that few people could truly understand. The league seemed perfectly content to enjoy the massive spike in attention she brought, while doing next to nothing to shield her from the hostility that was surrounding her. This toxic environment then followed her right into Team USA camp. Several veterans carried the exact same energy they had during the regular season. Some clearly saw Clark's popularity as undeserved, while others resented the way she was overshadowing their legacy. So, when she was benched at practice, it didn't feel like a simple coaching decision, it felt like another brutal extension of that same pattern of exclusion. For Clark, this wasn't just another tough moment. It was the clearest confirmation yet that the disrespect she was facing wasn't random. It was organized, it was consistent, and it had followed her into the one place she thought would be immune to it, the national team setup. What happened next didn't just surprise observers, it absolutely stunned everyone in that building. The breaking point, however, came from a place no one could have ever expected. Just when fans thought the controversy had peaked, Commissioner Kathy Engelbert stepped into the national spotlight and managed to make everything 1,000 times worse. During a television interview that was meant to calm tensions, she tried to frame the growing hostility around Caitlin Clark as simple competitiveness, comparing it to old basketball rivalry. Instead of condemning the targeting, the hate, and the clear divide forming in her sport, she spoke with a smile as if all of it were just great business helping the league grow. That moment felt like a direct slap in the face to anyone who had watched Clark take hit after hit with no real protection. The backlash was immediate and fans erupted online, absolutely stunned that the commissioner seemed more interested in the marketing value of Clark's struggles than in her actual safety or well-being. It revealed something Clark had likely been feeling for months. The people running the league were treating her battles as entertainment rather than a serious issue that needed to be addressed. Inside Team USA, that interview shifted the atmosphere. Clark found herself caught in the middle of a storm she never asked for, as the league's top figure had essentially signaled that all the drama surrounding her was good for business. That message poisoned the environment around the national team. Instead of unity, the roster felt divided. Instead of support, Clark faced sideways glances and quiet conversations happening just out of earshot. What should have been an exciting chapter in her career became just another painful reminder that her presence made certain people deeply uncomfortable. The realization must have hit Clark hard. If the league's highest authority wouldn't defend her, then who would? And more importantly, why should she fight to represent a system that couldn't even acknowledge what she had been going through? That single question would lead directly to the decision that shook Team USA right to its core. What unfolded next exposed a much deeper issue that had been quietly brewing within women's basketball for years. Beneath all the smiles, the photo ops, and the public displays of unity, there was a powerful, unspoken divide between the old guard and the new wave of stars. Caitlin Clark wasn't just another rookie, she was the player who single-handedly pulled women's basketball into a new era, and for some veterans that shift wasn't exciting, it was threatening. Inside Team USA, certain veterans had built a tight, exclusive circle over more than a decade. They were used to being the ones who shaped the team culture, dictated the hierarchy, and commanded the spotlight. Clark's rise completely disrupted that delicate balance. Her fame wasn't gradual, it was instantaneous. Overnight, she became the name driving ratings, selling out arenas, and instead of embracing her as the next torchbearer, parts of the old guard treated her like an outsider crashing their private club. The signs were everywhere. Diana Taurasi's viral quote about reality coming for Clark, snide remarks on broadcasts, players visibly shaking their heads when reporters mentioned her name. It was all felt everywhere she went. Clark represented a future the veterans didn't fully control, and some resented her for it. That resentment carried directly into the Team USA camp, where her presence stirred unease among those who feared being overshadowed. This wasn't a simple personality clash, it was a struggle for relevance, a fight between eras, and Clark, whether she intended it or not, had become the epicenter of that conflict. The truth was becoming impossible to hide, the veterans were losing their influence, and the new era was arriving faster than anyone had ever expected, and that immense pressure is exactly what set the stage for the next dramatic shift. As the tension inside Team USA grew heavier, Caitlin Clark reached a point that every superstar eventually faces. She realized she didn't need the system nearly as much as the system needed her. The league had spent months pretending her impact was exaggerated, but the numbers told a different story. Everywhere she went, arenas sold out. Every game she played became a trending topic. The power shift was undeniable, and Clark finally recognized it. Inside Team USA, this was the moment she began to pull back. Not emotionally, but strategically. She wasn't going to beg for minutes or fight for approval. She wasn't going to sit silently while being sidelined for internal politics. Instead, she started thinking about her own future, her brand, her influence, and her well-being. The whispers grew louder that Clark had told those close to her she was done trying to fit into a space where she clearly wasn't welcome. She had done everything right, staying quiet when others talked, working hard when others tested her patience. But this latest slight, being benched with no explanation, was the final sign she needed. The truth was brutal. Team USA needed her star power far more than she needed their approval. With the next Olympics on home soil in Los Angeles, her presence would define the event. Without her, the excitement drops, the ratings drop, the global spotlight shifts, and Clark now understood that leverage completely. Her decision to walk away wasn't a tantrum, it was a calculated realization that staying would only allow the disrespect to continue. So she stepped out, not with anger but with certainty, sending a warning across the entire basketball world. When news of her stepping back began to spread, the numbers painted a picture more alarming than any headline. Before Clark, the WNBA struggled, but the moment she entered the league, everything changed. Ratings tripled, merchandise sold out. Every metric the league had been chasing for years suddenly spiked because of one player, and that is what made this moment so devastating. By walking away, Clark exposed a truth the league had hoped no one would recognize. She wasn't just a rising star, she was the engine that revived women's basketball. Yet the very people benefiting most from her influence were often the ones who treated her with the least respect. Veterans enjoyed upgraded travel and had more leverage in salary negotiations, all because of her. Corporate sponsors flooded in. Her presence guaranteed attention no marketing campaign could ever replicate. But instead of celebrating the growth she brought, the old guard pushed back, as if protecting a shrinking territory. That resistance revealed how fragile the league's dynamics truly were. Clark wasn't just challenging history, she was challenging comfort. Clark represented evolution, but evolution requires change, and not everyone was ready to let go of their grip. Instead of embracing the future, they treated it like a threat. And now, with Clark stepping away, the numbers were showing the true cost of that decision. Everything finally came to a head during a moment that should have silenced every doubt: the All-Star Showdown. It was supposed to be a light-hearted exhibition. Instead, it exposed the truth. When Clark suited up opposite Team USA, the game quickly turned into a complete humiliation for the national squad. Her pacing, her vision, her shot making, she made Team USA, loaded with veterans, look slow and disjointed. That was the night fans realized the chemistry excuse had been a total cover. It was never about basketball. Clark had proven in front of the entire world that not only could she keep up with the best, she could lead them. The clips went viral, and the embarrassment for the old guard settled in immediately. For veterans like Aja Wilson, the shift was unavoidable. The spotlight they once controlled was now glued to Clark. It was a turning point that exposed how outdated the hierarchy had become. Add to that the Cheryl Swoops drama, the constant belittling from media voices the league continued to platform, and the visible frustration from certain veterans every time Clark's name dominated the headlines. All of it blended into a perfect storm, just waiting to break. The benching at practice wasn't an isolated event, it was the final spark that ignited everything Clark had been holding in. So, when she finally walked away, it wasn't a surprise to those who had been paying attention. It was the natural end to a long, painful line of disrespect, and the very first sign that the era of quiet acceptance was officially over.